So, good morning and welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Liverpool, they're ahead of the game. Jurgen Klopp's team, they're 5 clear in the Premier League after Manchester City's slip up at Norwich. The kids, they're all right. Frank Lampard's faith in the Chelsea Academy, it's being repaid after Tammy Abraham scores a hat-trick in their 5-2 win at Wolves. And it's back to the future. Quique Sánchez Flores prepares to take charge of his first game back at Watford. 3 tried and trusted guests with us this morning. Jason Burt is Chief Football Correspondent with the Daily Telegraph. Natalie Jedra is sports correspondent with ESPN. Miguel Delaney is chief football writer at The Independent. Morning all, thanks for coming, good to see you. Thanks Natalie, because Natalie was at Anfield, which we'll talk about in a few moments' time. She came down last night, she's with us, joins us on the show this morning. Don't forget, you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup, and the best will appear on screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at the papers then. They all reflect on events last night at Carrow Road. Mind the gap, Pep. 5 points behind Liverpool already. Liverpool with a 100% record. It's the biggest ever lead in the Premier League after 5 games. Manchester City losing at Norwich last night. Liverpool beating Newcastle. We'll talk about those 2 games right at the top of the show. The Sun's reflects on that game at Norwich yesterday. You can sing like a canary. You can also sting like one, it turns out. Massive win for Norwich last night. It is the dream team. Timo Pukki, another goal for him. David De Gea signs a new contract. This is according to the Sunday Mirror this morning. It's also that story with David McDonnell is on the back page of the Sunday People this morning. De Gea's a clean sheet for him yesterday at Old Trafford. Andy Dunn's column in the Mirror, don't call them a golden generation. This he's talking about England. You can call Sancho and co. They're certainly the special ones. Andy reflecting on England's performance against Kosovo on Tuesday night at St Mary's. Will this man be in the next England squad? I would certainly think so. Tammy Abraham scoring 3 yesterday up at Molineux. And the main man, Sadio Mane, the Anfield ace and his pals, simply the best. They beat Steve Bruce's Newcastle 3-1 at Anfield. And Natalie, as fortune and luck turns out, you were there yesterday to see Liverpool win yet again. Just talk us through it and how impressive a start Liverpool have made to the season, and just how good were they yesterday after that early goal for Newcastle to come back and win 3-1 at Anfield. Yeah, they struggled a little bit in the first 20-25 minutes, but after that they just dominated the match. It was impressive, and it's really pleasant from a neutral point of view to see this Liverpool team evolve in these past 3 years, and the way that they just find themselves on the pitch. The goals were beautiful, 3 beautiful goals from Liverpool, and they all knew exactly what they were doing, the movements that they should do. So it's impressive how Liverpool keeps improving, and we've seen in the past few seasons a few teams who didn't do much during the transfer window, and they managed to step up and managed to improve, and now we see this happening with Liverpool. They are just so mature, and it was an outstanding performance. Are they a better team for you than last season? They were impressive enough to go and win the Champions League, of course, but they fell just short in the Premier League by a point. But have they improved? Yes, because we keep looking at the statistics. Oh, they just lost 1. How can they improve from there? Yeah. But I don't think you should look at this. You should look at performances. For example, in the last season, during January, which is a crucial period for the Premier League, they dropped a few important points. They had a few performances that weren't so great. So there is room for improvement. Not if you look at the statistics, but there is room for improvement, and they are mastering it. They are really doing well. Yeah, they certainly are. 5 wins in a row for them. They've already got a trophy, of course, having won the Super Cup this season, Jason. We'll come back to Liverpool in a few moments' time, because we also need to talk about Manchester City and what happened to them yesterday at Norwich. To be 2-0 down, to be 3-1 down, 3-2, or to make it 3-2 in the final minutes. Why have they lost that little bit of appetite, that little bit of desire from the defending champions often have in these situations?
They'll be accused of that if this carries on. But I think the bigger problem really is defence. And I think obviously Kompany leaving, and then Laporte's injury, I think has been key to them. And you look at that combination of Otamendi and Stones, and it doesn't work. And I think Guardiola's got a big problem. I think he has to find a quick solution to that. It may well be that it's moving Fernandinho back into the defence, which I think they've been doing in training and trialling a little bit. But you look at it and you think the riches of that squad, how strong it is all over the pitch. There's one area there is a big problem now. And I think what's interesting to me is I think teams will look at what Norwich did and think, well, that's the way to go at them. You know, be very sort of aggressive in your attacking. And I've said three attempts on goal, three goals. That isn't always going to happen. But you know, there was the intent there from Norwich to actually have a go at Manchester City. And I think the last couple of years in particular, some teams have gone and played City and thought, this is damage limitation. Let's just try and get out of here with the defeat that we can get. And actually now I think teams will think, actually no, there are vulnerabilities in this team that we can exploit. And that's the challenge for Guardiola to deal with, because defensively they were very poor.
Is it good for English football that a team that cost £400 million to assemble and is one of the best teams that we've seen certainly in English football against a side that cost around £6 million, that it had been patched up, that Norwich have got 11 injuries, which we know all about? How important is it for English football that these results can still happen and still occur from time to time?
Yeah, hugely important, especially given one of the understandable expectations in the run-up to this season was that City would again claim close to 100 points, just demolish all before them, and that results like this were almost impossible. So I think it's testament to Norwich, and also instructive given that they've played both Liverpool and City in the first few weeks of the season. I mean, I suppose there's some allowance to have to be made to the fact that the Liverpool game was on the opening weekend. But I think another one of the undercurrents in pre-season was whether Liverpool would be able to sustain the same level. I mean, I think the expectation was they'd completely drop off and it'd be up to them to get to City's level. What we're actually seeing is that there's little kind of fissures and crack points appearing in City that Liverpool are at the moment exploiting.
And what for you are those vulnerabilities?
Well, I mean, as Jason...
Defensively, of course.
Defensively, I mean, you'd wonder, and I suppose, I think maybe people expected this last season after the 100 points, but whether it's just the slight drop-off that comes in application, and given, I mean, one of the things that was said after the treble was basically that they were knackered, that the kind of the mental effort required to win those trophies, and I suppose bring in the European campaign as well, that even though all the players obviously want to stay at the same level, mentally almost they can't. It's just too much of a toll.
Yeah. Which is your treble, by the way? I think I make this a quadruple. I make this a quadruple.
Oh no,
What's your
champions of the Community Shield.
I'm not having the Community Shield.
You're not having the
or the Super Cup.
Or the Super Cup.
Not any trophy where you can win it with one game.
Did I see you at the Super Cup?
Yes.
Well, you don't. It doesn't count, but we do. We go to the Community Shield and we go to Istanbul for 3 days.
Like exhibition matches.
Exhibition matches, yeah. What about you, Natalie? Do you see vulnerabilities in this before last night's defeat? Did you foresee vulnerabilities? Did you see them?
Not so much, but I think now everybody's talking about the defensive point in City. But I think actually we need to stop looking so much for the individualities, for like Stones and Otamendi, and see that City in the past few seasons, they managed to find collective solutions. And I think that's what they're going to do now with the defensive side. You may think that John Stones and Otamendi are not playing like Otamendi and Laporte were, or Kompany and Laporte, but Laporte is injured, so that's it. Of course, it's a big impact, especially in the way that they, on the build-up and in the way that they defend, of course, because he was the most consistent defender in Manchester City. But City always managed to find good solutions. They played without Kevin De Bruyne last season, most part of last season, and he was a key part of the attacking part of the team. So now I think that I truly believe that they are going to find defensive solutions, but not looking at individuals, looking at the collective.
But if we have key players, I mean, if we look at the best teams in the, let's say in English, let's take Liverpool for an example. Would we really see Salah start a game on the bench? Firmino, yes. Having said that, Firmino yesterday, international duty, of course, in Los Angeles, wasn't it?
So yes, Los Angeles and Miami.
He spent the best part of a week in Los Angeles with the Brazil national side, so he is on the bench. First game of the season, Mane was on the bench against Norwich, I think. So we do see it. But De Bruyne yesterday, on the substitutes bench for a game, you know you're going to be under pressure. The anticipation would be Liverpool are going to beat Newcastle. Pep would anticipate that before kick-off.
Yes.
It's the 12:30. By hook or by crook, somehow they're going to do it. They did it with style in the end. He knows this is a game they've got to win.
Absolutely, yeah. You wonder whether he had half an eye on the Champions League, coming up in the midweek, and maybe thought that De Bruyne had, played quite a lot of football and maybe needed a little bit of a break. And obviously, in the end, they actually needed him to come on the pitch and try and rescue the game for them. Yeah, it was a surprise that he didn't start. I think, you can't really rest and rotate too much. But then you look at the strength of that squad, you know, you think of one squad that can do that, then that's that one. And I do take Natalie's point, but I just think the way that City play, that defensive centre, that defence is going to be an issue for them going forward. That combination of Otamendi and Stones just does not work. It does not work as a pair, and I think that's going to be a real issue. If he's going to try and continue, and they will, obviously they're not going to change their way of playing. And going forward, that's going to be the biggest issue. But
why doesn't it work, Jason? These are big names, big personalities, massive transfer fees, and you're playing for Manchester City. Why doesn't it work? I don't know. I don't know that's a good enough excuse. This just doesn't. It's not your excuse.
No. I
don't
think
know those two or Pep.
I'm surprised Otamendi stayed. I've got to say. I think with Kompany going, fair enough. They maybe thought they'd have to keep him as a senior centre half, but I felt he'd kind of, you know, he's gone past his sell-by date for Manchester City. I'm surprised he didn't bring in somebody else, really, as possibly a first choice alongside Laporte. You know, because Stones obviously had his issues, you know, in terms of how the mistakes he's been making. Hasn't been too convincing. And obviously it was very interesting in the last season that, you know, Kompany played a lot of games. He was in the team. They needed him. And I just think the combination of those two, there isn't a leader between them. And there's nobody marshalling that defence and taking control of it. And it should be Otamendi, really. But I just don't think he's strong enough to do that as a sort of personality as much as anything else.
Has there ever been a point when they've convinced you? Either of those players?
As a pair, I like John Stones. I've got to say, I do like him as a player. I think you know, there are issues around making sort of, you know, individual errors which continue to haunt him. But I think generally he's a very, very good player. But I think he needs somebody alongside him who's going to sort of marshal that defence. He's not really going to be that person.
Do you have an excuse if you're a player that hasn't been playing much, and then you're brought back into the side? Do you have an excuse?
A little bit, but only for a few weeks, then, because you should be expected to adapt by then. But I do wonder whether Norwich's third goal yesterday, whether Otamendi fresh airing a pass is going to become something of a symbol of the first few weeks of the season, because I think teams, I think that's the biggest issue with Otamendi. I mean, he's adapted to the City team before and playing that football because the whole thing works. But now, if it's a little bit of a fall off, or maybe more relevantly, teams target them and target him, I think they and him could run into more trouble, because I think that they're going to go for him a lot for the next few weeks.
Yeah, we've seen City's vulnerabilities. Let's go back to Liverpool, because you were there yesterday, Natalie, and this front three, and in particular the performance of Firmino when he came on, because those touches around the penalty area, he is a class act, but it feels as though he's a symbol of this Liverpool side and the way that they play. Absolutely.
Yesterday I had a chance to interview Klopp after the match, and I thought his definition was brilliant. He said, if you are a really real football person, if you really enjoy football, if you're not like that fan who sometimes watch a match, if you love football, you can't appreciate more what Firmino is doing, because there's a discussion in Brazil that if Firmino is the best Brazilian that has ever played in the Premier League. And the counter arguments that I hear is that, but he was never lead scorer, he never led in assists, he never won the Premier League. But that's the thing about Firmino. It's hard to measure how much he does for the team. It's not on the stats. It's just, you just need to watch it. You just need to enjoy it. And sometimes I think he goes a little bit under the radar, especially in the European scenario, that he's not appreciated enough because his stats are not outstanding, but he does so much more than that. Yesterday, of course, he had 2 assists, one of them just brilliant for Salah's goal. But
do you know what, Natalie? I actually thought, it's not that I thought it was any better, but the appreciation of the pass for the Mane goal, because the entire defence is beaten, and also that ball slows up. That ball slows up for him to run onto.
The impression that I have about Firmino is that his vision of the game just keeps improving. And when you think that he reached the top, because the past few seasons he's just been brilliant, and now he just keeps getting better and better, and he reads perfectly his team's needs. It's impressive. We keep talking about how unselfish he is, but his cleverness on the pitch, it's so crucial for this Liverpool side today.
Yeah, it is impressive, and these boys, Mane and Salah, they just keep scoring goals.
Yeah, it's a great combination actually, as Natalie says. I think Firmino's the sort of oil in the machine really for Liverpool, and he makes those two players better, you know, because obviously I think they're just very, very direct, very clever players, but obviously, you know, they rely a lot on their pace and and their sort of aggression in the box, but he's the one who's got that subtlety. And also he sets the press, doesn't he? I mean, he's the one who presses first, he's the one who closes down the opposition. It's that work rate as well. But yeah, they're getting better and better. What I really like about this Liverpool team and what they did in the summer was they've given the players a chance to sort of develop really as much as anything else. They thought, right, we'll just put our foot on the ball in terms of the transfer market. We don't need to bring in loads of new players here. Maybe we'll make a few changes next summer. This season is a season to capitalise on what we did last season, to push on with that. Talk about that hunger to win the Premier League now. And you've got a couple of new players coming in effectively in Oxlade-Chamberlain and Joe Gomez coming back. But I just like the way they've just thought, no, actually, hang on a minute, everyone else can get on with their business. We're just going to just sort of look at what we've got. These players haven't peaked yet. And this could be the season when they peak as a team, you know, and you think, well, actually, look at them so far, 5 wins from 5, and that combination up front, you go a long way to beat it. It's interesting, actually, we talk about England later, but Gareth Southgate's almost talking about Harry Kane as his kind of Roberto Firmino dropping off and playing those balls through. So he's looking at Liverpool thinking, that's the combinations I want to get for England.
Yeah, that combination up front for Liverpool, will we ever see, could you see Liverpool operate with a conventional number 9 again under Jurgen Klopp, or do we accept that the players that he's got there and the flexibility and the movement that they've got and the pace and the way that they play and the way that those three are constantly in circulation, is that the way they will always play, or could you ever see a day when they've got a classic number 9 again?
I think it would take an absolutely top-class number 9, in the mode of Lewandowski that he had at Dortmund, because it does feel as well, I mean, if you look at the recent history of scoring and the biggest numbers, the real scorers now are those players that come in from wide, the wide forwards, and the number 9 has become actually, the false 9 is now the true 9, which Firmino is. And I suppose, as both Natalie and Jason have alluded to, so much of Firmino's best work is unseen and off the ball, and yet, despite, given the way he drops off, given the pressing, and yet despite that, he's also actually, particularly in the last few months, is producing his own really impressive highlights reel. I mean, already this season we've had the flick against Arsenal, and yesterday the back heel. And yeah, just in that true 9 role now, he just offers that platform to both Salah and Firmino, or Salah and Mane.
How significant is the gap between Liverpool and Manchester City at this stage of the season? How do you see it?
I think it's obvious too early.
We're already looking at November, aren't we? In the fixture between them, it's already.
Yes.
Oh, well, this is getting bigger and bigger now.
Yes, exactly. But I don't see it as like a huge gap. I think we've seen yesterday a few flaws in the City side, and we've seen a really good performance in Liverpool. So it's a bad moment to compare them. But overall, I don't think it's that big of a gap.
Sure, okay. We just need to spread a little bit of love for Norwich City as well. There's a lot of Liverpool this morning, but also Norwich and their performance yesterday. Timo Pukki, I mean, look, that entire side yesterday and the way that they performed, and Carrow Road was clearly jumping, and rightly so. But this is an exceptional result. This after 38 games of the season, we'll still look back and as one of the moments and highlights of the season, say that was a special night in the Premier League calendar.
Even better because they're missing so many players, weren't they, as well? The defensive midfielder played in centre half. They've got a reserve right back, comes in, plays fantastic, and Sam Byron. You've got Cantwell, you've got Pukki, who played absolutely brilliantly. I mean, I'm fascinated by Pukki. I mean, obviously, how can you come into the Premier League at this age when you've had this kind of effectively a journeyman career, you know, and not done particularly well at lots of clubs you've been
Celtic,
at. Yeah, exactly. And then be this player. You know, obviously fantastic last season in the Championship, but that's a different ball game, you know, coming into the Premier League and playing so well, and obviously assisting as well as scoring goals. Daniel Farke's done a fantastic job, obviously aided by the it's a very streamlined board actually at Norwich. They've lucked out a little bit, haven't they? Because they thought, well, we're going to go down this route of youth. We're not going to spend a lot of money. We're going to develop these players and bring them in and give them a chance. With this coach, obviously with his background, and obviously sporting director there has done extremely well. They've lucked out, but they made their own luck by doing this. I mean, they've been brave enough to think, no, we're going to go with these players and give them a chance. And you've got all over the pitch, you know, players who are only going to get better. Max Aaron didn't play yesterday, but a fantastic right back. Obviously, Godfrey at centre half. You know, they are a very exciting young team. And what's been good is that they've attacked the Premier League. And I think that's the blueprint now for teams who come up. You know, you want to see that. I think the last few years it's changed. Before it was like try and consolidate, try and grind out some results, get a few wins. I think actually Bournemouth probably changed the template a little because they came in and thought, if we win enough games, it doesn't matter how many games we lose, we win enough games.
I think didn't they win at Chelsea early on?
Yeah, exactly. So they've come up and thought, well, it's about winning games in the Premier League, not grinding out draws. And they've done that. And I think they've set the blueprint. You see, all the promoted teams this season, to be fair to them, have come up and thought, no, we're going to give this Premier League a go. And I think Norwich, as I say yesterday, that set the template for what other teams should do against Manchester City now. But whether they can sustain it. Well, listen, with so many players out yesterday and beating Manchester City, you think, well, maybe they have got the squad depth to do so.
You said they show no fear. No fear yesterday. They were 3-0 up against Newcastle, weren't they? They went on to beat them. They showed no fear against Chelsea. I know that turned into a defeat in the end, but they're not afraid. They're not afraid, and they're not intimidated. Okay, next up, we're going to move on to Tottenham. Big win for them after some peace talks between Mauricio Pochettino and his players. They beat Palace 4-0 yesterday. More on that game coming next. Welcome back, Jason. Look at the company Mauricio Pochettino keeps. So David Beckham was in attendance yesterday at the shiny new stadium at White Hart Lane, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And Poch said, David told me afterwards, I wish I was still a player playing for you at this amazing stadium after watching Tottenham dismantle Palace 4-0. Riyadh Al Samurai in the Mail this morning, he says, and so to the riddle of Tottenham Hotspur, it lives on, unsolved and baffling as ever. A day will come when they conform to expectations, but this was not one of them. They beat Palace 4-0, all 4 goals in the first half of that game yesterday. What do you make of events going on at Tottenham? Because Poch said on Friday, didn't he, that he'd had a meeting with his players, and it was pretty much a clear the air, peace talks, let's crack on with the season. The window's closed, you've been away on the international break, now let's get on with our season.
I'm certainly not going to criticise Pochettino for talking to the media, and actually in many ways he's probably the most media-friendly manager out there at the moment. He's probably the most quotable manager out there at the moment. But it does puzzle me at Tottenham Hotspur, how did this issue around the window and players possibly go in and the European window being open longer, how did it become such a big thing around the club? I mean, obviously Eriksson, we know, wanted to leave. But as far as I'm aware, Tottenham didn't get an offer. So it wasn't like he was fighting to get out where the club had gone in heavily for him. And it just seems to me sometimes with Pochettino, he almost sort of talks up a crisis a little bit. It's like, is it really that bad at Spurs? And was it really that much of a distraction for everyone that we had this window that stayed open? Because, as I say, they weren't like fighting off bids left, right and centre for everyone. I didn't think that was the case. I mean, if Christian Eriksen's going into them saying, look, I've had this offer from Real Madrid or Atletico Madrid, but I don't think that happened, and I don't think the players had big offers to go. So it seems to me that maybe it reflects a little bit more on the manager himself being a bit unsettled as to whether or not he's 100% happy at the moment with things. Maybe he didn't get quite the window he wanted in terms of players coming in, but even that, you think it's not too bad. Although, again, as ever with Tottenham, doing a lot of business late in the window. But I just wonder sometimes, I think sometimes managers maybe overthink things, and maybe it becomes more of an issue because they're talking about things more than they should do, I guess. I don't know. It just seemed weird that you put in a performance like that now, after the international break, and think, like, everyone's settled now. Were they really that unsettled before? And maybe they were. Maybe it's not been... What I wonder sometimes with them as well is, I think that Champions League final, and you see this sometimes with teams, especially if they lose the Champions League final, it kind of unsettles them a bit. It kind of like knocks the equilibrium a little bit. And they probably thought...
They went nowhere with it.
Yeah,
there was no great release.
Exactly. There's no great, like, that's the climax of that. We've won the Champions League. It's like, no, we've lost the Champions League final. Like, finally, you didn't expect to get into, really. So you've climbed that mountain. And then where do you go after that? Because you haven't got a prize at the end of it, really.
Liverpool came back the following season.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the test. Do you have that mental resolve to go again? Or was it a bit of a fluke? You know, and that's maybe what maybe he's thinking, no, I want to go again, and maybe they haven't given me the tools to go again, and you've got these players wanting to leave, and maybe that's what the issue's been. I don't know. It seems quite puzzling to me. Yeah,
I thought they were back to the sort of the semblance, their sort of bracing best yesterday, Miguel, because I just felt over the last year or so that the teams to watch in the if you're not going to challenge, that Liverpool have got the team. They are the team to watch in the Premier League right now, and Tottenham had lost a little bit of that stardust, but it was back yesterday.
Yeah, completely. They looked intense again and kind of, ravenous in that way. The best Pochettino Spurs do, and let's not forget that's probably their best Premier League performance in since December, since to be Everton 6-2.
At their new stadium.
Because they've had such a bad record this year. And to be fair to Pochettino, though, the one thing I would say, he did repeatedly say in August that he kept going on about how I need everyone 100% focused because that's how much of his management works. And he kept alluding to the transfer one in that regard. Now, he probably didn't help, but there is at least, I suppose, a rationale for this, maybe, that now the window's closed, he feels he can kind of engender that kind of full focus.
But you look at Danny Rose, for example, and they left Danny Rose out of the squad, didn't they? They took away him on pre-season, they went somewhere, left him behind. You think, right, okay, he's going to go, that's it, fine. Why would you do that if he's not got an offer on the table? Why would you do that unless you thought, well, he's going to definitely go? And then you think, right, okay, and then he comes back and he's playing again.
Well, Aurier is another example, actually. It looked like he was, they wanted rid of him, and then suddenly he's back in the team yesterday and sets up 2 goals.
Yeah. Does Lucas Moura, does he get a raw deal at Tottenham? I think he does. I think he gets a bit of a fall guy here, but does he get a raw deal at times?
Yeah, there is this expectation to see more of him, especially after last season, definitely. And sometimes there are some question marks around Lamela, who's been in Tottenham for a very long time, and who is a player that Poch really trusts. But regarding yesterday's performance and the mood, I think ever since the season started, the mood around Spurs has been a little bit different. Yeah. And if you go to matches, you can feel it, you can see it.
In what way do you say it? I understand, but can you articulate how do you sense it?
It's just, I think Tottenham is a clear reflection of the manager. They play with passion and they deliver everything with intensity, because Poch is like that. He's all about emotions. He's all about passion. Mm-hmm. And I think in every interview that he gave, he showed that he was very bothered with transfer windows and how things were going. And yesterday he mentioned that it was hard pre-season. It was a hard period during transfer window. And now everything just fell into place. And it looks like he can carry on with his job, with everything that he does around the team. So things just seem to be falling into place now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm puzzled as to why it was so fraught. Really, I say it's not as if they had lots of offers on the table for players who obviously we know Eriksen wanted to go. There was Rose Aurier, but it just doesn't quite make sense to me that it was quite so fraught. And I just wonder whether it's the manager himself thinking, maybe I should have moved on myself. Yeah. Maybe.
I mean, in May, some of the players we've been talking about that he could leave this summer. Yeah. I mean, I do wonder where.
He talks about it himself.
Well, yeah, exactly.
He talked about it for the Champions League final, for the Champions League semi-final.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, and again in the summer. I mean, I don't know why. Unless you're definitely going to go, why do you keep saying that?
And maybe after the Champions League final as well, and everything happened at the club, there was an expectation to be more ructions this summer. And now it just maybe need a little bit to settle down and kind of, as Poch again has said, and now that we're into September, that they just have a bit more of a sense of themselves and they can just crack on at least till January.
Yeah, well, they've certainly settled down with a 4-0 victory over Palace yesterday. Another team that's settled down is definitely Chelsea. Frank Lampard's hands are tied a little bit, and circumstances in terms of their transfer window and the transfer ban. But the players that he's put faith in, the young players, Tammy Abraham yesterday, 3 goals for him. Mason Mount in the England squad, got some minutes on the pitch under Gareth Southgate. Does this vindicate the way Lampard has selected his team this season? Because he has got other experienced players that he could choose. Giroud on the bench yesterday, for example, is one of them. Yeah,
and even I was looking at that team before I went out yesterday, and I thought they're playing 3 at the back, perfect player for 3 at the back, David Luiz, who Lampard, of course, took a big decision to let go. It was probably, I don't think it's a coincidence of having played that system without Luiz, but the formation worked. It's been their best performance of the season so far, probably, and it certainly vindicates Lampard. In terms of vindicating Chelsea, I think there's an interesting thing there in that this is a club that basically, I suppose, for the last 16 years has almost done everything they could to avoid playing youth, and now suddenly they've been forced in the situation. And the grand irony is the chairman or the owner gets what he's always wanted, which is bringing through players from the academy.
Somebody once said to me...
Does this suggest, I was going to say, sorry Jace, but does this, the success so far, and okay, we're 5 games in, so we have to take that into account, but it's not a fluke when a player scores 3 times in the Premier League away from home at Wolves. We know that. But the problem over the next few months, if this continues, we're going to start raking over that Chelsea academy over the last since 2004. Say, well, could he have been? Why didn't he? We're going to end up with a list of players as long as your arm. So, hold on a minute. Why weren't they given a chance? You could have saved yourself an awful lot of money.
Mourinho once said something at a Premier League launch a few years ago when he said, I can tell in 5 minutes whether a young player is going to make it. I just don't agree with that. I mean, how is that possible? I remember asking coaches about it after and said, no, that's just not true. How can you possibly do that? And I think there's been
Did you get a ball out? You had presumably in front of him, you got the ball out?
I'm a bit too old for that, I think. To be honest, I'm talking about young players, not me. Maybe yourself, Neil, but not me.
Don't do yourself a disservice, Joe. I've seen you're a tricky little winger, aren't you?
Not really, no. never.
Well, I thought you were.
More of a bruising centre midfielder, I think.
John Robertson type.
possibly the same speed, yeah. But no, I mean, I just think that if that's been the kind of disposable culture at Chelsea, and he was part of it, then yeah, that's why a lot of players have been gone. What they say when you challenge them on that specific point, Neil, is that the players up until really the last couple of years haven't really been good enough. The ones who've come through the academy haven't really been quite good enough. Now, what they're saying is, if you look at us now, before when we started the academy, we were loaning players to clubs in Holland and so on, and maybe down the leagues. Now we're loaning players to Premier League clubs and bigger clubs, and now those players are coming through who are of a higher quality. For example, Abraham, they tried to loan to Wolves last season. Didn't, and obviously now he's in the team. So they're saying the players are a better quality. But I think fundamentally there has been a shift, and Miguel's touched upon it. I think you have this bizarre contradiction at Chelsea in that they want to win, and they've got an owner there saying, I actually want some young players to come through. Well, you can't always win if you bring the young players through. I mean, Manchester United did it, but it's not really, the correlation isn't there. So sometimes you've got to give somebody time. So then you've got managers sitting thinking, well, I'm never given time. How can I? And it's not rocket science, it's quite obvious. But now you've got this transfer ban. And as I say, somebody said to me at Chelsea a couple of years ago, the best thing can happen to us, and he was joking, is get a transfer ban. And now they've got it, well, yeah. It's an opportunity. Classic
case of turning a lemon into a lemonade, because it's impressive. Everybody, how many complaints have we heard from Chelsea fans that they wanted younger players to have a chance? And now you see this Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount, they are ready for it. And Chelsea is pulling off very exciting things this season. It's cool to watch Chelsea play. Yeah. It's entertaining, and you see them making mistakes and correcting these mistakes. It is a learning curve for Chelsea and for these players. But you see Tammy Abraham, he's a great finisher. He's good with the header, he's good with his feet, his pace is really good. You see Mason Mount coming back from the national team more confident because of course that reflects on the club as well. So Chelsea's just exciting this season.
The amount of times I wrote that Chelsea hadn't, and I think Sam Wallace might join me, I don't know who's got the record for the amount of times that we both wrote that Chelsea hadn't brought through an established first-team footballer since John Terry, which was back in
2000, wasn't it? It was a couple seasons.
I think he might have made his debut before then even. But the amount of time, I wouldn't say not with joy, but the amount of times that I did write that, and Sam would have written it as well many times too. But they've changed. They've definitely changed that.
Yeah, completely.
Lampard's changed that.
Yeah, there is a wider issue there as well, I think, that goes beyond Chelsea, but that maybe Chelsea reflect because of the amount of players that have come through, in which, I mean, Jason touched on it, but a lot of coaches will say that the ages between 17 and 20, no matter the talent of any player, they need the actual experience of proper football to kind of coalesce the talents. And if they don't get it by the age of 20, then it's almost too late because they haven't brought it all together at the right time, and the players that could have made it just end up kind of drifting off. And again, you come into issue that how many have been lost to that, or just kind of end up falling away down the leagues.
I'm reliably informed by Luke, our producer, that October '98 is John Terry's first-team debut. Of course, he went on loan briefly to Nottingham Forest as well. Natalie, I just want to finish off on another defender, actually, an ex-Chelsea defender, which is David Luiz, a decision that Frank Lampard made to sell him. They both talked at the time that they're both big personalities, and they had a meeting that I suspect was a little bit more volatile than they said publicly. But it was, as Frank said, it was a very, very robust conversation. Was it the right conversation to have? Was it the right time for Luiz to move on? And of course, he's moved on to a London rival.
I think if you consider he's past 30 and he wants to play, and he realizes that he's not going to play that much in Chelsea, he's not going to have as many opportunities as he wished for, I think it's pretty straightforward. If that's clear for you and you have a chance of moving, of course, then you can discuss, well, but he went to Arsenal, which is a rival, and you can discuss that. But for him, as a professional athlete, it's just that straightforward. He wouldn't have as many opportunities as he wanted, and then he just moved on. And I agree with Miguel when he says that the back three would work for David, as it did before with Conte. But now Chelsea has moved on, David has moved on at Arsenal, and I think that's just how it works, that straightforward sometimes in football.
Yeah, sure. Okay, good move all round then, it seems like. Just a final word as well. Manchester United won yesterday. I think if you'd have spoken to most of the media before Saturday's game against Leicester City, most people have said, well, they're vulnerable. They'll get beaten by Leicester. They had to grind. They did have to grind this one out, and of course it's Marcus Rashford from the penalty spot that makes the difference. But was there any signs in that game that you have seen that Manchester United, things were coming together for them on the field?
I think there's a
I
way.
love the deep breath.
Yeah, I mean, if I was working yesterday, that's the game I'd have gone to. I think that's what you're alluding to.
Yeah, well, Ollie Holt went there for the
you'd have gone to that game expecting.
Yeah.
I think the disappointment actually yesterday was how poorly Leicester played. I mean, they had a few moments, but they weren't particularly great. I think what's interesting with Manchester United is it seems like the best way of playing is as a counter-attacking team without the ball. Yeah, you know, and that's the formula they're probably going to have to go ahead with, which would suggest that they may do better against the better teams this season. You know, and
that could be a problem then, because
exactly
by nature of being one of the big six clubs, there could be so many games where they're left with the ball.
Exactly, and you saw the way that Wolves played against them, obviously the way that Wolves play anyway, and obviously it created a big problem for Manchester United in that second half at Molineux, didn't it? Because you know, they didn't really know what to do. You know, and Wolves were picking them off, and I think that is going to be an issue for them. And maybe that's just what they have to accept at the moment. The big problem for them is their midfield. Yeah, I mean, it's the midfield, the combinations. Obviously, they missed Pogba yesterday, but you look at that midfield and it's pretty average, isn't it? Yeah. To be honest with you, for a top six team, that's a pretty average.
Well, Solskjaer spoke very warmly about McTominay yesterday, didn't he? I have to say. So, okay. Next up, we're going to talk international football actually, and England. Their performance against Kosovo, crazy, chaotic game against Kosovo on Tuesday night at St Mary's. More on that coming next. Welcome back. With us this morning, Jason Burt, Natalie Jedra and Miguel Delaney. Let's just remind you what's in the papers. This morning we've already been talking about this in part one of today's programme. Mind the gap. It's 5 points, 5 straight wins for Liverpool, but the first defeat of the season for Manchester City, losing at 3-2 at Norwich last night. Some good news for Manchester United after their win yesterday. David De Gea, he's a keeper, he certainly is. He's staying at Old Trafford. He's about to sign, or has signed, his new contract. The sun, sing like a canary, you can sting like a canary. That's reflecting on Norwich's victory over Manchester City last night. We've just been talking about this man, Tammy Abraham. Treble top, 3 goals for him yesterday in Chelsea's 5-2 victory up at Molineux against Wolves. Natalie was talking about Mane earlier, the main Mane. Not so sure he is. I think it might be Roberto Firmino after that performance yesterday. Jason's specialist subject. I knew you'd like that. I knew you'd enjoy it. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But he's your specialist. Well, one of your specialist subjects.
I've got more than one, Neil.
I know you have. I don't want to upset you on this table. It's Watford, the Premier League. I had to come back. That's Quique Sánchez Flores. Jason will have the inside story.
Jonathan's got the inside story.
Jonathan has got the inside story. We'll talk about that in part 5. Let's talk about this now, though. Andy Dunn's column this morning. Don't call them a new golden generation, but Sancho and co leading England into another generation, exciting generation. He says they are the special ones. Let's talk about the performance first against Kosovo on Tuesday night at St Mary's, because it was chaotic, it was thrilling, we all enjoyed it. But what did it tell us about the state of English football, the national team, as things stand? Where are we?
Brilliant going forward. Maybe still issues to solve in the centre of the pitch.
Well,
yeah. The only allowance I had to make for them in the second half was that they were so good in the first that maybe it was just a natural dropping off. Although, to be fair, they were, even in the first half, as excellent as they were going forward, they were still cut out a few times, particularly for that first goal. But I do think maybe they're in that strange situation where the group is almost a foregone conclusion as well. So, and Southgate said this after the Bulgaria game, where it's actually difficult to judge some of these matches, because ultimately, in international football now, there's a group of 8 that are so far above everyone else, and they're pretty much all the Western superpowers, or Western Europe superpowers. So, I mean, I wouldn't let that temper my excitement with the team too much. I think they're in a really good shape with a few issues to solve.
Has Southgate, it feels a little bit to me that Southgate has almost borrowed the identical template of, well, City and Liverpool.
Bit of Liverpool.
This front three, get the ball to them, let them get on with it, and then, okay, Liverpool a little bit more refined. They're not hoping for the best at the back, but England certainly are the way they're playing. Yeah,
actually, I mean, you touched it earlier with Harry Kane playing maybe the Firmino role, but even the midfield, you sometimes think, well, there's actually some technical players in that team that they could put in and maybe produce more of the passing football that Southgate has said he wanted. And in that regard, it was actually notable how often Pickford actually lumped it in the second half under a bit of pressure. But maybe that functional midfield makes a bit more sense in the term, because it's a bit like Liverpool in the sense that the way they play serves to release the attacking players in front. So I think there is a logic there, even though you would think maybe he could stick in some of the more technical players.
Yeah, and his point in his column this morning is that we lauded, of course, Raheem Sterling for his performance, and rightly so, of course, at St Mary's. And he talks about the stampede to usher Raheem into Lionel Messi's and Cristiano Ronaldo's private members club. But Andy also makes the point about Jadon Sancho and his performance as well, and how impressive that was. His first goals for England, wasn't it?
No, and I think actually the combination of Sterling and Sancho is very exciting. And obviously Gareth has talked quite a lot about actually how much Raheem Sterling has become a bit of a mentor for Jadon Sancho. And I think that's quite interesting in itself because, okay, Marcus Rashford did well against Bulgaria, but actually interesting, when invited to, Southgate didn't really talk him up as much as we thought he might. He sort of basically said he's a work in progress, didn't he? In terms of when we spoke to him after the game. He's not saying that about Jadon Sancho, who's a younger man, but he's not saying that, is he? You can sense his excitement about Jadon Sancho. He talks differently about Jadon Sancho. And you look at it now and thinking, I'd say that chemistry between Sterling and Sancho in particular, I think pushes Sancho into the team ahead of Rashford. And that front three of Sancho, Kane and Sterling is the way ahead. And what's interesting for England now, and it's probably counter to what a lot of coaches would think, is they're going to build the team from the front back. That front three, whoever it is almost non-negotiable. And you've got Callum Hudson-Odoi coming into it as well. So Gareth's going to look at it and think, I've got the front three, or I want a three, and then what do I get after that? Usually coaches go, right, I'm going to build from, which is what he did at the World Cup, wasn't it? He thought, well, I'm not going to get enough of the ball, so we'll go for a back five. He looks like he's looking at the other way around now, and it's obviously you're doing that because you're trying to get the best out of what your best players are, and the best players are the attacking players.
Is there going to be a point, Hudson-Odoi, when he does come back to full fitness, back in that England squad, is there going to be a point when we see the Liverpool front three replicated in the England team? So without Harry Kane, but he's going to play three of a type together in the front three.
Without Harry Kane?
Would Southgate do it? Will he experiment with Hudson-Odoi, Sterling, and Jadon Sancho? Would he play all three? Would he experiment with it?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think
Should he?
Well, why not? But I think it's going to take an awful lot to get Harry Kane out of the team. I really do. I mean, I think not because he's captain, but I think he's just such the main striker in the England team. And it's not as if he's like a number 9 who just stays up top and that's it. And you know, he does. As we keep talking about, he does a lot of the work that Firmino does. It's a very similar sort of. It actually, to my mind, is the best passer of the ball in the England team as well. Yeah. You know, if he could pass to himself, he'd be fantastic. You know, I mean, if he could play number 10 and number 9, it'd be brilliant for England. But no, I can't. I find it hard to see him coming out of the team. But I think. It's interesting again because Gareth did name check Hudson-Odoi, didn't he? He straight away he said Hudson-Odoi. You're thinking right, and when a coach does that, you know he wants to get that out there. That player's in his thoughts, you know, and he's the one he's talking about coming into it.
I love it when he also said something along the lines of, well, it was a little bit too early for Tammy Abraham to come back into the squad. Then scores obviously then goes and scores a hat-trick.
Yeah.
But I think it's great that we are actually having this discussion because. Before the World Cup, we were talking so much about Harry Kane, and we were talking about other attacking players as well.
Harry Kane team, yeah.
Yes, but now it's different, and the level of competition is so high, and we're discussing all these options, and I think actually the clubs can really benefit from that because Marcus Rashford now he needs to go back to United and he needs to deliver great performances so he can be in the starting 11.
So here's a question for you that you've probably never had before, Natalie, and no Brazilians ever had. So how many English players? How many of our team? Bearing in mind you just lost to Peru. And drew with Colombia in the international fortnight, international break. So how many of our brave boys get into the Brazil side? How many would get in?
How many?
Who would get in?
Who would get in?
Put a yellow shirt on the shoulders of Raheem Sterling. Does he get in?
Yes, he does.
Straight
get
in.
I think he does get in. Although we do have really good options for the wings.
Yeah.
Yes, that's an important detail.
In a few minutes time, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Sterling would get in absolutely, and Harry Kane, because we have Firmino, so Firmino would be our first option.
Yeah. Oh.
And yeah.
So Harry's got to be super sub.
for the way that Brazilian team plays, maybe, and we're just more used to Firmino, yes. But Sterling's been impressive, and it's not only because he's scoring goals. It's the way that he sees the other players and what they need. The turn that he did on one of the goals in the midfield, it's just brilliant. And the way that he just he's so confident. He's just so aggressive all the time. It's impressive.
What is it about his game that's changed? That you've seen him from the beginning?
Well, talking to people who have worked
Is it
with
as simple as maturity?
one of the references made was that he used to be a straight lines player, even though he was like a brilliant dribbler. And what has really happened in the last 2-3 years is that, and it's partly to do with working with Pep, partly to do with himself, but it's that complete understanding of positioning and space in relation to the pitch, but also in relation to his own talent. So it's as if, I mean, someone put it to me, it's as if he kind of just has it's brought all of his talents together, and he has a complete understanding of what he can do and how he can move. And it's just, it's made him from a straight lines player into someone who sees the pitch in 4D.
Who would you put as in the starting 11? Harry Kane or Firmino? Because it's a big question for me. I don't know.
I'm just here to ask the questions.
Okay.
Let's moving on. No. Who would I put on?
I don't know. Really, it's.
If I had to choose, so one of them has to play through the middle, Firmino or Harry Kane for Brazil.
Yes,
for Brazil.
For Brazil.
Well, Firmino's Brazilian.
Okay.
Doesn't Gabriel Jesus play ahead of Firmino?
Yeah. He started in the World Cup. Yeah.
You can't discount Harry because he's just so ruthless in
know.
goal,
exactly.
isn't he?
He's a
Give him the
brilliant
chance.
finisher.
Put it in.
Yeah.
He's a finisher. He's ruthless.
Yes.
Absolutely ruthless.
Yeah.
Tough one.
Yeah, it is a tough one. So Raheem, is he? Where Andy talks about him, and he was asked. I think Sammy Mokbel asked Raheem about the ambition to become the world's best, or the world's best, or in that kind of category. Where is he? Where does he stand for you at the moment?
Well, I mean, obviously we're in an interesting period now. We've got obviously Ronaldo and Messi getting older. We're not sure how long in particular Messi will be at this level, because I think physically it's starting to catch up with him a little bit. He's had so few injuries, but it's taken such a beating over the years, frankly, that I think people in Barcelona are talking about it maybe catching up a little bit on him. And then below that, you'd have expected it to be Neymar, but obviously it hasn't been. And then after that, you're looking at Mbappe, and you're looking at Sterling, really, in terms of that the player, and maybe even below that. Well, I'm thinking in terms of attacking players, but world's best, De Bruyne, obviously, absolutely, and maybe even Sancho. And Sancho, in terms of, he's only 19. He's 5 years younger than Raheem Sterling.
Yep.
And where he is now, he's probably further ahead than any England player's been at that age for a long, long time.
It's really maybe.
Yeah.
But Sterling is really interesting to me. I think, obviously, Miguel talking about the improvements he's made in his game. I mean, I wouldn't underestimate how intensely he's been coached by Guardiola. Absolutely intensely coached, especially in that first year and a half he was Manchester City manager. I think they worked extremely hard on his finishing, his crossing ability, his positional play, getting into those right areas where you get that smooth finish. That's what Guardiola talks about, the smooth finish. You're not snatching at things. You're giving yourself time, and you're creating the opportunity where you really have to score. And that's where he is at the moment. He's transferring that onto the international stage. But I also think, and we've talked about a lot on this programme in the past, but I wouldn't underestimate the importance of him off the pitch as well, and how that has influenced him on the pitch, because you see he's got more confidence in his ability now in terms of where he talks, and he understands the power that he has as a sportsman.
Why would it help?
I think it does generally. I think if you're confident off the pitch, I think absolutely, and you've got a voice. And we see that, and obviously we talk an awful lot about the media relations with football players and football, and we saw it, and not going back to it too much, but England at the World Cup, if you're comfortable in an environment where you're talking publicly as well, and you feel that, it empowers you. And he feels more empowered to me as a person as well as a sportsman.
He's not inhibited.
No, not at all. And he's got an impact, and what he said is all true, absolutely true, and it's had an impact, and you can see the impact that has, and that must then have a knock-on effect to how you behave on the pitch. You must feel taller for a start. You must feel bigger. You must feel more important. Yeah,
he's certainly playing with a player of huge standing and pedigree and stature at the moment, Raheem Sterling. We're going to talk about another man who's got pedigree, stature, and was at the top of his game last night with a last-minute winner for PSG. That man's Neymar. He's coming next. They were just talking about Liverpool and their great start. I'm old enough to remember, and I think you might just be as well, Jace.
Older than you, Neil.
When Manchester United's, was it 85, 86 when they won 10 in a row?
That's right.
Can you remember where they tripped up? Sorry,
obviously
I know
Palace, isn't it?
No, Palace were in the old second division at the time,
really?
as you should
I
know.
should have known
Oxford,
that.
was it?
No, Natalie, any ideas?
No guess.
We're going to check, but I think they drew 1-1 at Luton in game 11, and then blew it from there. And Liverpool went on to win the title. But I think 85, 86.
It was about then, yeah.
Under big Rob.
Atkinson's last season, last full season.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Champions League football is back. this week. Big game. You're going to Paris Saint-Germain.
Yes, I am.
Against
yes.
Real Madrid. We were marvelling earlier at Neymar's, not his antics, but his goal last night. Last minute against Strasbourg. Scores an absolute worldie. Cross comes in from the left, overhead kick from pretty much just inside.
It would be unbelievable for itself, for the beauty of the goal. But if you put all the context with the goal, it's truly unbelievable that it happened like that.
It is. Well, what's going on with this guy, Natty? Because we saw him. Look, we know all about his history as a player. We know all about his quality, his talent, his ability, and his pedigree. We know that.
Yeah.
But what on earth is going on with this guy?
Well, after yesterday's match, he gave his first interview in a very long time, when he said that he did want to leave PSG because of personal reasons. Nothing against the club. He just wanted to go back to Barcelona for personal reasons, and that he knows that this season he's always going to be playing away. Even when he is at Parc des Princes, and that it's okay. It's okay that most fans don't like him at this very moment, because the most important thing is for the fans to be behind the team and not behind Neymar. But yesterday was really a demonstration from the ultras, actually, of how unsatisfied they are with Neymar. I think during the season, there is a chance that he wins some fans back from PSG, the regular fans, not the ultras, because I think the ultras, they really made up their mind against Neymar, and the way that he behaved definitely did not help with his clear preference of leaving PSG, making a real effort to do so, He gave an interview saying that his highlight as a player was the locker room when they beat PSG and he was in Barcelona. So fans, they don't forget these things that easily. And the way he behaved, I was curious to see how it would go, his first match for PSG. And it went as I imagined, because he always delivers on the pitch. Nobody questions his talent or anything like that.
He scored for Brazil, didn't he? He scored against Colombia, didn't he?
He always does well in the Brazilian team. Yeah. During Copa America, Brazilian fans were really missing him, and they were saying how reliant sometimes the Brazilian team is with Neymar. So nobody questions that. It's just how the way that he behaves, if it is really as professional as it should be.
How much has he changed since the guy that you knew? Because you met him when he was at Santos.
Yes.
When he was 15, 14,
my first interview with him, he was 14.
Okay, 14.
Yes.
So
lots of ups and
Neymar
downs.
You saw at 14. Look, I accept that he's a teenager, so we get all that.
Yeah, sure.
But what has he become from where he came from?
Lots of ups and downs in his career, definitely, because he reached the peak at Santos, and then at a certain point of his career in Brazil, he had some attitude issues with an old manager that were really discussed, and then he went to Barcelona, and things just settled for him. His football improved, his physicality improved, and he was just much more low profile. And in the national team, it's always been the same. He really likes to play for the national team. Everybody praises him and the way that he behaves in the national team. So there, it was always like that. But in his club career, it was just lots of ups and downs. And I don't know how this season's going to go for him. But of course, it's very obvious to say that it's far less than what we expected. He says that if you look at his statistics last season, he did really well. Of course, we can look at his statistics, but I think when you reach a level, you just expect so much more than just goals and assists from him, and he can't deliver in that level. Not talking about his football, I'm talking about him as a footballer, as a professional footballer.
Yeah, okay. You're going out to see Paris Saint-Germain. I know your colours are nailed to Mbappe's mask, and I say that because I only say that, James, because I've got pictorial evidence on your Twitter account of
that's
this.
true.
So it's you and Mbappe, isn't it, from an interview which was conducted last year with him, wasn't it?
I interviewed him first when he was signed by PSG. So I did at his unveiling. I went to see him. Then I saw him again in Glasgow. That was before they played Celtic. So yeah, no, I mean, I think he will be the main man at Paris Saint-Germain. I mean, I think if you ask Paris Saint-Germain, who would you rather lose? Obviously, they'd definitely rather lose Neymar, but they're not going to lose him without the fee being paid back. I mean, the Qatari owners are very proud people. They're not going to let this player go just because he wants to go. And I think what's going to be fascinating this season is how much pressure they put on him, because I think they feel he's just massively underperformed and he's not even tried at times. And I think they've actually challenged him on that now. Mm-hmm. And I think they want to see how he reacts to that. And I think they will do everything they can to keep Mbappe ahead of Neymar. And if there's any sort of sense of tension around those two, which there isn't, but there could be because obviously they're going to be the big personalities, then I think they'll always back Mbappe over Neymar.
Yeah. I don't know how you do it. You always get to go to the game of the week, don't you? Paris Saint-Germain against Real Madrid. What's the game of the week for you? Napoli, you're going to.
He's going to both.
You're doing the dream double.
Yeah.
I've got to make the Chelsea against Valencia. But Liverpool's defence of the Champions League, and Jurgen Klopp was asked about it yesterday, and how he would pick his side, and whether he could rest players. And he said it's not a question of resting players. We want to pick the team that's going to win. We want to pick the players that are best equipped to win the match at that moment in time. It was clear from what Klopp said that he's got his eyes focused on defending the Champions League, but also winning the Premier League. That's what I took from that press conference yesterday.
I do wonder whether we'll see a bit of an inverse of last season, in that maybe it's Liverpool will actually finally win the league and City will finally get the Champions League now, and in relation to how they're focused as well. But also Real Madrid have made us forget this a little bit because of winning it 3 times in a row, but they're still the only team to actually retain the modern Champions League. So I think what's most interesting with regard to Liverpool is how they carry being the champions and being that aura, and maybe a certain level of assertiveness.
We've seen it in the Premier League, haven't we? They've used. It strikes me that they've used that victory last season and the manner of it and the manner of reaching the final, and said, okay, let's crack on. Let's go again.
The only issue is, I mean, and this is an issue with Liverpool, it's an issue with the Champions League, and a problem with it is that none of this really matters till after Christmas. Because it's such a skewed, distorted competition now with a massive split in it.
Hold on a minute. So the Community Shield doesn't count. The Super Cup, which you went to Istanbul for 3 days for, doesn't count. And 6 group games in the Champions League across 8 groups also doesn't count.
But there's always
and you're going.
But there's always a surprise. But this Champions League season in particular feels more predictable than ever, in that you can go through those groups, and bar maybe the Zenit St. Petersburg group and the Chelsea group, you can just pick the top 2.
Well, you say that, but obviously Liverpool one fantastic Alisson save away from going out, last season. So I mean, I genuinely agree with your point. You look at the groups, and actually the group draw this time isn't particularly interesting.
Okay, 3 big teams now.
Sorry. Okay, what would you do?
I mean, that's going to take the redistribution of resources across European football.
We've got you've been reading Jonathan Wilson's column, haven't you, in the Observer this morning, or did you? Or did you give him the info? And
I gave him. I beat Jonathan to that one.
Yeah.
No, but I do think it's an issue, in that even last season, though, I think there was only one case of in the group stage of a team beating or finishing above a club with more resources or more revenue than them, and it's why I think that the competition actually. The Champions League really transforms after Christmas, when it goes from the most predictable competition to one of those gloriously unpredictable, because those knockouts are sensational.
Then you get a team like Ajax, who went all the way to the semi-finals.
But also based on
a team like Tottenham, who went to the final. We have to accept this is unexpected.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But even Tottenham, I suppose, right? They're not as wealthy as that top tier, but they're still one of the top teams in the wealthiest league in the world. And Ajax, I think, were just a bit of a kind of. I mean, if you look through the semi-finals over the last few years, they're just ultimately a freak that happens. Mbappe, Bernardo Silva.
That's 2 freaks in the last few years, though, isn't it?
But didn't win it. Didn't get past semi-finals.
I know what you're saying. I mean, I think, and I think there is always going to be an ongoing issue about reformatting the Champions League, but I'm not really sure how you change it.
No. Well, there is an argument we've got to a point where, even though it's a grotesque suggestion, that a Super League could be desirable in terms of competitiveness, because there's too much. I mean, we're seeing it across the domestic leagues as well. Where
how would that be? How would a Super League be competitive?
Because we wouldn't see so many games that aren't really
but then the
classic
knockout
football matches anymore.
The knockout stage of the Champions League are fantastic.
But that's the case. But that's because
how would that marry up with the Super League?
But that's finally, it's more the issue of, I suppose, teams of equal quality playing each other more often, as opposed to these mismatches we get, because that is it's become a real problem in football, and it's why Norwich yesterday was so important. In the same way, might obscure a wider issue that just. There's such a disparity in resources now that so many games and so many leagues.
If we had a Super League, where would Red Bull Salzburg, Genk, Napoli, if they're all in one division, where would they finish? Because I'd say the batting order would be take anything from Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester City, and Liverpool, and then there'd be the 16 teams below.
I think 12 to 13 clubs that are, which I suppose, well, they probably wouldn't lay in 6 of the Premier League. You've got Juventus from Italy, maybe Inter now that they're on the rise again and seem to have money again. PSG, Bayern, the Spanish 3.
Next time you're back on, I want the blueprint of the Champions League from Miguel Delaney, along with the Super Cup and making the Community Shield
the one thing I should
relevant.
say, a Super League is an awful prospect, but just what's happening in football. And I think this is tied into bigger issues like why Bury have gone bust, why there's so many problems down the pyramid. But the disparity in the game is now an even bigger problem.
Yeah, it is a problem, and we've talked about the issues at Bury and Bolton on this programme over the last few weeks. OK, next up we're going to go back to the Premier League. I think Miguel's still in love with the Premier League, aren't you? Because you're going to a game today, aren't you?
Yeah,
you are going to a game. We're going to talk about that next. Bournemouth, Everton, Watford against Arsenal, and Quique Sánchez Flores about to go back into the dugout at Vicarage Road for the first time. So he got reappointed as manager of the Hornets. More on that coming next. Wherever we go, I certainly get told that I don't know the game, know your football. But for some reason, the historical events, I have a little bit more, my memory serves me a little bit better. And I did ask for a bit of football trivia where Manchester United tripped up in the 85-86 season because they won the first 10 games in a row, 100% record under Ron Atkinson. We asked for your tweets where they tripped up. And Monty's tweets told us that Man United lost 1-0 at Sheffield Wednesday. Lee Chapman scored the winner. That was their first defeat. But they drew at Luton Town.
You were right.
5th of October, which I didn't know. We had to look that up. 5th of October, they drew at Luton Town. I think it was a 1-1 draw. I'm looking for help. I'm looking to you for help.
I can't remember. My
and you're looking at me very
Neil.
vacuously. You don't know what I'm talking about, do you?
It's not unusual, is it, for me to look vacuously? But
no. I don't know why. You always look to you always look for help.
I'm sorry.
People of a similar age.
Well, yeah. Well, being kind to me.
Let's. I'm going to be kind to you. Let's talk Quique Sánchez Flores. You know all about this story, Jason.
You'll be kind to me now.
I'm always kind to you. You're going to see him this afternoon.
Yep.
You are going to see him. Miguel's going to see him.
I'm not actually, no.
No, you're not going to see him. That's his
going, yeah.
See, it's the short-term memory is the problem. The long-term memory are much better. But you'll see him this afternoon. OK, why Quique? Why have they brought him back?
It's a typical Watford move, isn't it? I mean, it's not just obviously the abrupt sacking of Javi Gracia, but obviously bringing back a manager who they feel can be the right fit for them now. I think they don't really worry about PR consequences at Watford, do they? Really, I think that's the one thing they don't concern themselves with. And they as somebody
they've got their song, haven't they? Excuse me. The fans have got their song. Yeah.
So I did my column on it during this week and said Watford don't do normal. You know, and I think there is scope for that. Really, you know, I think there is scope for that in the Premier League because what's the point of doing the same things as other clubs do? You know, and I think Watford are so determined not to be in trouble, and they are extremely ambitious. You could argue too ambitious, but they look at their squad and think we shouldn't even be in relegation trouble. And I think for Gracia, the end of last season there was a drop-off in results. Obviously they thought initially that was just because they got into the FA Cup final, and I think the nature of that FA Cup final defeat has caused them a lot of problems. I think there's been a big hangover with the squad and with the coach. They felt he lost a bit of motivation. They also thought that maybe they made a big mistake in giving them a long-term contract, which is quite interesting in itself because obviously Flores has got a 2-year deal, but do we all think he'll see out the 2 years? I'm not so sure because I think now you won't get another Watford coach getting a big long deal after that. That's just the way they operate. The continuity at Watford doesn't come from the coach. The continuity comes from the owner, from the chief executive and from the way they operate. And that's just it. And yeah, they've got to like it or lump it if you go and work for Watford. And I think somebody like Flores has gone there. He's never actually stayed anywhere more than 2 years anyway himself, and neither had Gracia. So they know what they're taking on. And people will say eventually they'll come unstuck. I've got to say, I'm not sure they will, because I think you're underestimating Gino Pozzo and just how impressive he is as an owner as well as a director of football effectively, because he will drive that club forward. And I think they are so ruthless in the way they do things that I think they will probably survive again in the Premier League. You know, I think that's just the way they operate, and you just got to have to accept it.
Why did they get rid of him if he's the answer, if he's the solution? Why did they get?
Because there was a drop-off
in the first place.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the question I was asking all the week, because there was a drop-off when he was that one season in charge back in the Premier League. First half of the season they were terrific. They beat Liverpool 3-0, I think it was. Obviously they had a great result against Arsenal in the FA Cup, and the FA Cup they got into the semi-final, and I think they just felt he lost a bit of motivation again. I think they won't let anyone drop off, and I think he's come back with a point to prove, and I think that's been part of the motivation to re-employ him, is because he probably realised that he was onto a very good thing at Watford in terms of being in the Premier League, being close to London. he enjoyed it being there. I think he probably thought he's got to come back and he's got a point to prove as well. But as I say, I don't think anyone sees it as a long-term appointment. You know, I think it suits everyone right now for him to come in.
I love these first day pictures. Ignore my writing and my notes on this, but the first day pictures of Quique Sánchez Flores, because he looks relaxed, refreshed. He's got the broad outlook and he's got his own ambitious ideas and plans of what he's going to do. And then in about 6 weeks' time, after sort of 4 defeats, a draw, and still waiting for the first victory, they look very, very different. But
it might just be the beard that's grey.
Yeah. It might not. But very popular figure. And it's someone that was very, very highly rated, of course, when he was at Valencia way back in
Atletico Madrid as well, won the Europa League with them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so he is highly regarded. He's not a man without ability.
Yeah, I mean it's quite a curious career, in that given his ability, it actually should be better probably. And despite winning Europa League, it's had kind of this strange gaps in between that he himself has kind of lacked that consistency. I mean, he's almost a managerial personification of Watford in that way. That it's just. There's always a sense of more, and yet there's just these drop-offs in between.
Yeah, I think now that he is back, what we have to look is what can he do with Watford, because he has these characteristics of building defensive sides very strongly. So there is an expectation now that this will improve, but actually Watford in a few occasions this season has lacked a bit of accuracy in the front. I remember especially the match against West Ham at Vicarage Road, Everton as well. So there is this side that needs work as well.
I think one piece of advice I'd give to Javi Garcia, obviously now he's gone, but don't...
It's a bit late, Jason, for that.
Don't let the club sign a £35 million striker and not play him.
Yeah.
So
they
signed Ismail Issar for £35 million, which is a huge amount of money for a club like Watford, and he didn't play him. And I think that was again an issue. Obviously, Natalie talking about I think defensively, yes, Quique will come in and they'll want him to strengthen the defence and organise them better. But they think they've got all these very good midfield and forward players, and they just weren't getting the best out of them. You look at you've got Deulofeu, you've got Pereira, they've got Deeney, obviously injured at the moment. They've got Sarr, they've got Welbeck. I mean, that's a pretty good Premier League roster of attacking players.
Yeah. What's happened to the star man? Why aren't they playing him? The striker?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of those classic scenarios you get in football, don't you, where obviously he came in fairly late into the window, but he was fit. You always get coaches who seem to want to put players on the bench to start with. You think, why is he playing him? You know, it's like you bought this player.
Integration.
Exactly, integrate him into the squad and get him into fitness. You're thinking, really? Surely he's fit enough already and he can play straight away. And I think, I'd say, if Watford are sitting there struggling for goals, and he played very well in the Carabao Cup, that's a Carabao Cup, got a £35 million striker or forward player, and you're not playing him, you're thinking, that's not a clever move if you're under pressure as a coach.
Will Sanchez Flores, will he be able to change things quickly? They need to change things.
Yes, I think there's always the effect of a new manager, and the mood just changes, and the motivations as well. But I mean, it's the Premier League. He's not going to storm into the dressing room and work miracles all around. But there is an initial effect that everybody always expects from a new manager.
Yeah. What are you up to this week, Miguel? Because you're not at a game today.
No, I'm all Champions
Oh no, you're
League.
off. No, you're Champions League, aren't you?
Yeah.
Off to
all a competition. Our competition is slated.
You are busy. Although I don't know anyone who goes to more games than Natalie. I don't think the
We were
number
just
of
talking
games,
about
no
the number of
complaints
games
about
that you've
that.
referenced this morning. I think I'm not. Was I there? I'm not sure that I was there. I can never remember anymore.
Yeah, no complaints about that.
So Vicarage Road for you. Naples this week in the Champions League. Jace is off to Vicarage Road. Then
Yeah, I'm doing Villa Park tomorrow as well, actually.
Villa Park. You're
Villa,
a busy
West
guy.
Ham.
You're a busy guy. No wonder we've run out of time. But thanks very much for sparing some time in your busy schedules to join us here on Sunday Supplement this morning. Thanks to Jason, thanks to Natalie, and thanks to Miguel. Don't forget you can download the podcast from all the usual places. You can catch up with the show. It's also on demand. We're back next week, same time, same place, 10 o'clock. See you there. Bye-bye.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.